My name is Jose Rodas. I'm a premier field engineer based out of Charlotte here. I'm here with my co-presenter, Charles Champion. We're going to be talking about System Center 2012 R2 Service Manager, a CSM overview. My idea is there's going to be a lot of content that we're going to be talking about. What I wanted to talk about is that translating what I'm talking in the presentation versus what I have in my lab. And that is the idea that I wanted to, maybe that one or that one. Anyway, let's get started. This is the agenda. We're going to be doing, so I was delivering here a presentation last month, and we're talking about like a overall System Center point of view, what is Microsoft's standpoint in System Center. And then, I'll show a similar slide that I was showing last month, and then I'm going to start talking about Service Manager. The only thing with that is I wanted to make sure when I had to learn this myself, this was a little bit of a challenge. So that's why I wanted to kind of avoid the roadblocks that I had. And I know that I only have a few minutes, so I wanted to try to put as much information and, at any. What I was talking about is setting up Service Manager, understanding how the product works, what is the purpose of Service Manager, what is the value that we can get out of Service Manager, and then after that, we're going to be talking about, okay, what are different definitions that we have in the product. We're also going to be talking about, okay, so how do I set this up? What is the architecture? How does it look like? I have like in the slides, and we're going to see a complex environment, but you can, I have that same environment running, well, a subset of that environment running in my laptop here. So it's kind of we can scale, we can deploy a lot of, different connectivities, solutions, etc. But we can also make it small to work in a small environment. And then, components, and then management packs, which basically are what make the product work or extending the functionality of Service Manager. Okay, so this is kind of the same slide that I was showing in my last presentation last month, and basically this is from what I understand is the Microsoft vision of System Center, how System Center can help you provide value to your internal customers. So we see that we are DC admin was the title that I have, and the application owner. So basically that application owner is going to. The idea again is, we're going to request via self-service portal. I'm going to request either like a server or like an application itself, or just a server, or a whole solution for my organization. And then I do that by following a process that I'm going to be creating for my for making sure that the application I'm looking for is deployed. After that, once that application is requested and following the process, then this piece, which is basically creating the components that I'm requesting, is actually taking place basically by the service delivery, which is providing the solutions to the automation, and also it's like, okay, so putting multiple components together and making sure that all of the components deliver the results that I'm looking for. And here is the situation that we have where we configure and deploy our solution. Here are the different options that I'm seeing. So from a Microsoft standpoint, we can deploy that on a physical machine, on a virtual machine, or a private cloud, or on a public cloud. So these are different options. We can have other presentation about cloud computing, but these are the different offerings where we are able to provide that solution for you, okay? And once we have that application in place, or that solution in place, we just go back to a monitor and operating mode, where just make sure, okay, so now that everything is running, everything's set up, okay, is it working as expected? Am I able to meet the SLAs for my applications, or is there any problem that I should be aware of, or is it something that is safe to ignore, or a risk that I'm willing to take, or that kind of thing? So with that, basically this is how the System Center components come into the picture. So in my last presentation, we were talking about Operations Manager. So it was proactive and reactive monitoring. Okay, so we see specific thresholds, or we configure manager packs to do specific things, and then based on that, okay, alert raised or something happens, and then I act on to fix that. And what we're going to be showing today, or we're talking about today, is Service Manager, which are the pieces here. And orchestrator, which is basically I just have it, really simple couple of demos that I wanted you to see the potential of the things that we can do with System Center. So long story short, we are just, the System Center suite itself is a huge set of components, which basically are, with this release 2012, with the 2012 release, it's just we are not talking about like the monitoring piece of System Center, we're just talking about like the suite, and then from the suite, we are using components from the suite to help me help my application owner in this case, okay? Please feel free to stop me at any time if you've got any questions or anything. I may be talking a lot, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand this because there's a lot of content that I wanted to make sure that we cover here. All right, so now we're going to start talking about Service Manager itself. So these are the 4 big components that we have in the product. And with this, I'm going to start kind of jumping back and forth my scenario, my lab, because I wanted you to guys see what each feature is actually happening in real life. So, okay, so I have the IT Service Manager piece. I'm not an ITSM consultant or ITIL or any kind of that, I don't have that skill set yet, but basically what this is talking about is, okay, so I want to make sure that any process or anything that is related to something either proactive or reactive on my organization is something that I can document or translate into the product, so then we can, we have the data coming in and we are able to track down, incidents that are coming, problems that are coming, change management that are coming, different solutions that are happening in my environment. So let me show you here. Let me jump to my lab, and it's here. So this is basically when I'm talking about incident and problem management, change management, service request fulfillment, and service level agreement support. Basically, what I'm talking about are what we call in Service Manager work items. So in this, these are workspaces, and each one of these has different options. So in this case, these are incident management, activity management, change management, etc. So long story short, for example, any reactive things that is happening in my environment is going to be part of an incident. So you can see here that there's a ton of incident here. All of these are coming from Operations Manager, which was the product that is actually connected into my Service Manager database. I'll explain in the next slide what is the purpose of how this environment jumps into the type of data that we're handling in Service Manager. Other things, I don't know, for example, change management is also, it speaks for itself in terms of what we can do with it. Problem management is a way that we can track multiple incidents and we resolve the problem and those incidents should go away. Release management is kind of considered to me is release to production, where we can try to track down different changes in, in my application, et cetera, et cetera. Service request fulfillment, that is the piece where we document the process that we need to follow in my organization to do a specific task. And that is what I was, when they send the email regarding, okay, so bring your processes or whatever. I mean, I have a couple of examples, but usually what we do as System Center PFEs, I help my customer translate their process into the tool. I'm not here to like, okay, so yeah, let me tell you what is the thing that you need to know. My role as a Premier Field Engineer in System Center is to help my customer translate the process that they have in order to make sure that we document whatever we need to, and we make sure that actually the product works as expected. Yep.
So usually service requests in large environments come from tools dedicated to doing that?
What?
If we have a ticketing system, how does that tie in to?
I don't know if you want to jump in. I'll let Charles answer that.
No, that's a good question. The question is, if you have an existing ticketing system, maybe it's Tivoli or Remedy or something to that extent. I've had customers that have used this as kind of a drop-in replacement for those. Now, does it work the way that Tivoli or, Tivoli is not... Remedy's, yeah, probably a better example. And they were going from Remedy to Service Manager. And, there were some growing pains there because of this product kind of brings a lot to the table, right? So there's customizations and things that you can do to actually make this a fully functional service management product, tool as advertised. The thing is, what do customers typically do in those situations is maybe they have Remedy out there, and I've seen customers where they replicate that data in the Service Manager to get the data warehouse capabilities, things like that, where we already got processes defined for our employees to work out of this tool. We're licensed for this tool. We own this tool. Now they got this as part of buying the System Center suite, so now they integrate the two, and they, once Jose shows you something of the data warehouse functionality that you can get out of here, you'll see kind of how, it can offer that value to bring those tools together. So, all right.
Okay, so let me go back to this. Where is it? Okay, let me just put that in there. All right, so here's the piece that we were talking about, right? So basically, it's okay. So each of the features of that I'm using in the product, this is the piece that it's either reactive things or just proactive things that I wanted to make sure that are documented, or at least we have some kind of process in place to make sure that is covered. IT as a service, so service portal, service catalog, and role-based offering. So what that means basically is that we have part of the suite is actually a portal that we have. I have it right here, and basically this is the portal. So what I have here, I'm going to be doing a demo on this later, but basically going back to this, self-service portal, service catalog, and role-based offerings, what we get, or the value that we get is all the proactive processes that I have in my organization are going to be, or should be, documented into this section, and then if I don't have a process in place for what I'm looking for, then I go ahead and create an incident request, and that's basically okay. So I create that, and then I can follow, whatever, this is the problem that I have, and then I create different, categories, etc. But this is more a reactive approach to work items in Service Manager. Service Catalog basically is a set of processes that we're going to be having in my System Center implementation, and role-based offering is going to be based on whatever whatever role we have in our organization. We should be able to see different offerings based on the role that I have in my organization. System Center integration. Okay, so this is kind of a lot of improvement is done in this field, and also a lot of improvement is coming in, because the problem that I'm seeing is we're kind of learning as we go, and I've seen many cases working with customers where putting different connectors or inserting different type of data creates problems into my system, into my Service Manager implementation. So when we're talking about connectors from BMM and Orchestrator, basically it's okay, so I'm going to be provisioning information from Virtual Machine Manager and Orchestrator, okay? And also we have better connectivity, or we have the other features to these connectors. So basically I'm able to keep track better of the objects that are synchronized from Operations Manager, from Configuration Manager, and from Active Directory. And each one of these is something that we just configure on demand. I mean, we don't need to set up the whole set of connectors. We just set up, okay, I just need to replicate information from Active Directory, and that's it. And as I have my Orchestrator connector, I also am going to be talking about Orchestrator on runbooks. Runbooks are basically a set of, I call it activities that we tell the System Center Orchestrator product to do for us, and they basically does it when we tell it to from Service Manager. And then we have, this BMM private cloud integration. So basically it's provisioning VMs or making sure that we can deploy those components. So here's my Service Manager console, and when I was talking about connectors, sorry. Here are the connectors that I have. So you can see here that I have my Operations Manager. These two are my Operations Manager connectors. These two are my Operations Manager connectors. So I synchronize data for Operations Manager. You can see I have an alert connector, which basically populates all the incidents that I have in my environment, right? So, okay, so I have that there. So all this information is coming from Operations Manager because I configured my Operations Manager alert connector. My CI is configuration item. Basically, a configuration item is going to be any object that I have in my environment. like a printer, like a, I don't know, computer, anything. Anything is something that I'm going to be synchronizing into Service Manager, like, I don't know, databases, whatever. That's something that also is synchronized into Service Manager. Then the other thing is the Exchange connector, which basically lets me use email. Like I can create an email. I was doing some testing this morning. Basically, I can send an email to modify the status of an incident. So I just, okay, so this ticket, you know what, I think it's fixed. So I can email that. I say, okay, go ahead and resolve that ticket. And that, Service Manager resolves the ticket for us. And AD connector. AD connector is the big one. Usually it's the one that customers or organizations have a lot of, I've seen that many customers having problems with the amount of data that is coming from Active Directory to Service Manager. And the problem is that we need to make sure that we are synchronizing the right amount of data from Active Directory. We're going to we may be doing a couple of demos on that later, or I can show that to you later. Just wanted to make sure that I kind of follow this. So you saw the connectors, right? We are able to tell Service Manager, go ahead and pull data from wherever I define to, and put all that information or insert all that information in my database, and then I'm going to do something with that. What is the thing that I do? Basically, by adding this data that is coming from here, I create relationships, or I'm able to relate that information with different type of work items that I have in my Service Manager implementation. And then business intelligence basically is that's kind of a improvement from the previous release in Service Manager. So Service Manager is, this release of Service Manager is kind of a B2 or B3, I guess, I don't know. Because the first one basically had a very basic data warehouse implementation, and it was really difficult to extract data from reporting in order to, I don't know, be able to see historic data from reports, etc. And they improved that by adding OLAP support for reporting and drill down. So basically, I'm able to just use a really, let me show you. It's easier if I just show you rather than talk about it. So this is, I created this morning before, I wanted to show this to you guys. So basically what Excel is doing now is basically connecting to my analysis services instance in my Service Manager data warehouse, and basically is exposing all this data for me. So this is the value, one of the things that, that Charles was mentioning before, all the value that we're getting. Okay, so you can either get reporting functionality from here. I'm able to just show me events, etc. Or I can create a really nice dashboard. So I can show that to my management, or I just do whatever I want to. So if you guys are interested, I can show you how this was done. But basically, I was following an article from a colleague. It's really straightforward, and you can see that we're able to expose a lot of data. The only thing that we need to know is, okay, so how much data do I need? And I'll tell you later a couple of things that I identify by following that Excel file. Okay, any questions? Very good? Yeah? Okay. This is the one that I was telling you guys before. This is, okay, so what is all this? Okay, so let me start with something simple. I wanted you guys to, this is a lot of info, but I wanted you guys to see or to identify the specific pieces and be able to understand each one in detail, okay? So the self-service portal, basically, that's the end user piece, okay? So basically what it is, okay, so how do I insert information into Service Manager? Okay, so I can do that by using the portal, what I was showing you guys before, using the console, using email, or even checking my phone and see, okay, so I can modify, from my phone, I can send an email or whatever. So that's the end user piece, and basically it lets me access the information, and there are more ways to complete or that complement this, but what Microsoft delivers in the product out of the box is just that. I mean, I want to be 100% honest with you guys, but I remember getting calls from customers, and they say, okay, so I want, I want tablet functionality. I want to be able to put this on my, I want to have like an app in my cell phone to be able to change tickets or whatever. Well, there are third-party tools that you can put on top of Service Manager that gives you that functionality. So that's another thing that we need to understand. Service Manager itself is just the foundation, and it makes sure that you can able to translate your processes. Then if you want to extend the functionality, we need to see, okay, can I do that out of the box? Can I customize the product, or I need to buy something else? So that's usually a conversation that takes before we even put the DVD. I mean, that's another big thing in Service Manager. We need to make sure that we are able to understand the impact of the information that we're doing. And I'll show you what I mean by that. In my environment, let me show you. My environment is running on SSD, and even so, my, let me show you real quick. So you can see that I'm using 6 gigabytes of RAM, and my CPU right now is fine, but I've seen many spikes, and this is a resource-intensive product, so we need to make sure that we size the product appropriately. So I'm able to first, on the usability side, track down the processes or document the processes that I need, but on the other side, on the back end, I need to be able to have an infrastructure that can serve or that can actually work for those things. I went to too many customers, and I'm sure Charles has examples too, where basically the product was unusable. Why? Because there was, I guess, expectations that we need to meet in order to make sure that we tune down the product, because this is not a typical product that you just put the DVD and it runs. No, you deploy the product, you customize the product, and you keep an eye on the product, and then we should be able to see results or be able to understand, if everything that is happening is the way it should. So this is the back end. I'm sorry, this is the end user piece of Service Manager. Here, the solution, basically the different work kinds that I was telling you guys before. So we see that we have the problems, we have incidents. Remember that incident is a reactive thing that I have in my environment, and I can track down multiple incidents via problem. So the example that everybody uses is the network device. So my network device is down, so I have like 10 people calling me. Well, yeah, let me create a problem where I track down the network device issue, and then I put all those incidents into that problem. And I can show you that later. Service request was what I was telling you guys before. I'll navigate through that, or let me just show that to you real quick. So service request is the section that has all the processes that we're going to be using in our organization. So let me show you an example of what I mean by process, and this is what I wanted you to, if you have any questions or if there's any example that we wanted to see, I'll show that to you. So let me first show you service request. So this is an example that I had to do for like someone else. Let me. So in my case, the situation was, okay, so I need it's like an onboarding situation, okay? Okay, so like in my case, we wanted to replace this with a process basically wanted to replace that paper, that form, with this. So what it is, I created a process to follow that, to request that, to translate that process into my, Service Manager implementation. What is the process that we were looking for? Okay, so I am the user, and I'm going to be requesting to, whatever I need to get done. Okay, I need a new printer, I need a new device, whatever I need to. Then, okay, so my director is going to approve that for me, and then once that's done, this is the process in real life. This is what was done before, and this is what we wanted to translate, okay? So once I have that, then I go, okay, so that's done. Let's go ahead and let the help desk know that we need to get that done. Okay, so they go get done, and then they do the process, and the technician goes and delivers whatever service we need to deliver. I did a representation on that in my process here by following the activities that I created here. So this section here, let me show you again what I'm in the Service Manager console. I'm on the library, right? And then I'm on the templates. Templates are everything that, this is the power, or this is the flexibility, or this is the potential in Service Manager. We need to make sure that we are able to follow whatever processes we want to, because the product is flexible enough to follow any process that we want to. The only problem is that we need to make sure that we set enough checks in terms of, okay, we don't want to put like too many people to authorize something, or we just don't want to make a process too huge. We just wanted to keep this simple, and then once we have a simple process, we improve the process, okay? Let me just show you the example of that in here. So again, this is the example that is under library and templates, and under activities are the processes that I created for the service request. Remember that the service request, if I go back here, is what we were talking about, this piece here. Okay, so a service request is going to be this guy here. Well, this is just the template, right? So I have my RA is called review activity, and then MA is called manual activity. Okay, so basically that activity is going to be, okay, so it's just the approval for the hardware, and then what I do is, okay, so I need my admin to approve that for me. Okay, so basically, whenever whenever a new request comes in, the admin is going to get an activity assigned to the admin, and the admin is going to be able to approve or deny that based, or approve or reject that based on the information that he or she types here or clicks. Okay, so that's that, and then the manual activity. Manual activity is very simple. I mean, in this case, I didn't put any complex stuff, but basically, we can add activities by adding basically anything that we want. In my case, I created different activities. You can see here that we have, for example, runbook automation activity. That means that it's a runbook coming for orchestrator. I'm not going to be talking about that right now because there's plenty of stuff to talk before that. So, but this is the automation piece that we were talking, that Dave was also talking about when we were talking about automation system center. Basically, we can leverage the automation piece in the other component of the suite to follow a process that we have. Okay? All right. So again, simple process. Once that's done, the service request should be completed. Okay? And I have like, and those are configured here. So let me show you real quick. So, for example, that is a request for creating a new user Active Directory, and this is the actual request, the service request that I have created for adding the requesting new hardware. So these are how I configure it. So basically, I can customize whatever I want to here, and then once I have that, then basically I follow a wizard to complete all this information, and that's basically it. Let me know if you want to see more of this. I just don't want to like spam you with information. But this is another service queue that I created. I put a corp on it before, so I understand that it's something that I created rather than like anything that is out of the box. So I put everything in caps and my domain name first, so I know that it's something that I created other than like you can see this is in multiple languages. So what is all this? All right. So can you guys see? Because I have this, but I don't know if it is too much or not. Are you guys? Did I do that? All right, sorry. I forgot to. Thank you. All right, so what I was showing you before is the service request piece that is part of my service catalog on all request offerings. So let me show you real quick again. So here, again, here's the journey information, and then what I did is these are the different things. For example, this is the other service request that I created. And then what I do is, okay, so this is the information that I'm going to be seeing in the SharePoint portal, and then I translate here internally. I tell Service Manager what to leverage. In my case, I'm leveraging this runbook activity, and then once I have that, then it just does its job, and that's it. Okay. Back to the presentation. So we talk about problems, we talk about incidents, we talk about service requests. Okay? Remember these two guys? Reactive, this is more proactive. Release management, I didn't see many examples, but it's more from what I've seen in, I don't know if you have an example of release management. I'm not seeing many customers using. Right. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to check. So basically, this is kind of what I heard from I say ITSM consultants or architects, etc. This is more of a release to production type of situation, where I want to track down everything that happens when my application is going from a dev state to a production state. So we are able to track down activities that we saw before, and we can put down or document those activities into my release, or track down those activities via my release manager item, I guess. Change is change management. So it's the usual change management thing. I'll just show you real quick. I don't have a demo on that, but it's really a set of activities that we want to set up, right? So, okay, so I'm going to create my change management. Let me use Zoom it. So I'm on the work item section, and then I go to all change requests, and then what I do is I go to create change request. Okay? So when I do that, I have different, okay, so tell me, okay, so what type of change management or change requests are going to be using? Well, depends on what I'm actually going to be doing, or the type of change management that I'm going to be requesting to the change advisory board. That is more of an ITSM slash ITIL conversation. Basically, based on that, we're going to have different options based on the type of change request that I'm requesting. Is that the right way to say? So anyway, standard change request is the easiest one. It's just a simple process of, like, I don't know, updating something. So you can see that it's going to have already activities. It's similar to the one that we were talking before, right? It's like, okay, so I have this review activity and this manual activity. That's it. Okay. So if I go, you know what? I don't think this is the one that I want. Okay, so I get a new one. You should not use that as something that, hey, I forgot to do something and I want to throw that as an emergency. No. You do that only when it's something reactive or something like that. If there's some, I mean, that is also another recommendation that I remember hearing from ITSM guys. You can see that under, if I have a different type of change, I have a different type of activity based on that change. So we have, usually, I'm pretty sure that's going to have someone that's going to approve that, and then it's going to have different things that I'm going to be using or doing or whatever as activities in my, into my change request. Okay? So that was change. In compliance and risk, I didn't see many of these myself, but that's kind of an add-on that you put into the product. I don't have deployed that in my lab, but basically I think it's more for the government, right? Yeah, so that's if you need to follow, I don't know, if you're like a government organization, if you're kind of a, you need to follow a specific standard. Service Manager has the functionality to kind of make sure that, whatever activities we're doing are in compliance to, I guess legislation or whatever. Okay. Standard process automation, that's basically where the magic happens. Basically, it's where kind of the central repository of information. You can see that here, that we have the configuration management database. So that's the CMDB. Let's see what it looks like in real life. My CMDB is actually just a database. So basically what I'm doing is I'm connecting to my SQL Server instance, and what I'm doing is I'm opening the databases that I have, and that's my CMDB. Okay? So basically what you have is, your Service Manager database, and into that database you are going to have different tables that are going to be reflecting the type of, I guess, this is where we insert all the data that is coming from the connectors, and also we insert all the tickets, et cetera, et cetera. So the easy way that, I mean, this is where things can get challenging for customers if they are just inserting too much data, or they are not keeping track of the data that is supposed to be inserted into the database. Like any system-centered product, it's easier to insert the data than to groom the data. So we need to make sure that we plan ahead when we're trying to do any kind of deployment in order to make sure that I insert the data that I need only. So let me show you real quick. What I always do when I try to, when I'm on the customer side, I say, okay, so, what is the type of data that I have in my environment? So what I do is I run a report out of the box in SQL Server to make sure that okay, so what is the type of data that you have in your environment? So what I'm doing is just pulling up. In my case, I don't have a lot of, this is just a test environment, but you should see the different tables that should follow the type of work item that I have in my environment. So I say, translating that to Earth, or, to keep that simple, I went to multiple customer sites, and they may not be using all the type of work items that the product has. Okay, so what do you use Service Manager for? Well, you know what? I just use it for incident management, and I use that for change management. And what about service requests? I don't use it. Okay. I mean, it's fine. The product has the functionality, but you cannot use it. What I recommend is to at least use service request fulfillment, so you can document the processes, and then you can have incident management or whatever. Then you can use the reactive piece of Service Manager. Why I'm mentioning this? Because it's actually processes, number one, and number two is because I'm able to use the portal if I wanted to have all the processes. Remember that this is the proactive piece where we have all the processes that we need to translate. Okay? Okay, so let me go back to this. I have my CMDB, which was the database that we were talking about before, right? You just saw it. Then we have different forms, and we have reporting in data warehouse. And what I mean by that, or what we have on that, is the Excel file that I was telling you before. Basically, we're able to correlate that information, synchronize, because the information that we have in one database is kind of transferred into other databases. We can talk about that later if you want to. But this information is coming from other database than the one that we're seeing here. I'll talk about that later. Don't worry. So back to the presentation. All right. Again, my CMDB has the work items. What I was telling you before, my work items are my incidents, my problems, whatever I have to deal with. Then my configuration items, if I go to my Service Manager console, my configuration items is going to be here. Remember, configuration items is just any object that I have in my domain. So, for example, the computers that I have in my domain, the users, and that kind of thing. You see? So this is coming from my Exchange, from my Active Directory connector, okay? And then computers, etc. So you can see here, basically what we're doing is we're synchronizing these objects, and what we're doing is I'm creating, creating different work items, and I'm assigning relationships between the work item and the object that I have in ID, etc. All right. That was configuration items. Knowledge. Knowledge, it's, we call it knowledge management. That's the knowledge management feature that you may have seen in Remedy or any other ITSM tools. Basically, it's a way to track down knowledge or generate knowledge, like internal knowledge they have in your organization, and you want to make sure that before opening a service request or before opening like an incident, hey, are you sure that you're following, I don't know, for example, the antivirus recommendations for Systems and Operations Manager, right? So before opening your ticket, take a look at that and see if that actually helps you get your whatever you need to get whatever you need to get done. So that's knowledge management. The difference between work items and knowledge management, even when there are different type of, there are similar features, but the difference is that this is a feature that actually is using full text search. In other words, what I have the ability to have a better search capability for work items, for knowledge articles, than the search functionality that I have by taking a look at this view. And there are a couple of recommendations in terms of performance and scalability for incident view or whatever. Because, for example, I don't know, what I'm doing right now is something bad. So I don't know, for example, 7730. So that is bad. Why? Because basically what I'm doing is I'm actually throwing a query in SQL. I don't want to do that because let's say I have, this can scale up to, you have 50 consoles per management server. Per each one of these guys, this supports up to 40 to 50 connections. So imagine that, I don't know, test. Imagine that people is doing like different, queries in here, and then you have multiple views, so you do a lot of things. You just want to make sure that you just take it easy and do what is recommended, for example, is to do the query here. So, that's a better way that has less impact into the processing that we are doing here in SQL. So that's it. Remember that we're actually talking about processes and all that stuff, etc. But actually, what we're like hitting SQL all the time, and we're giving SQL a lot of things to do. So we need to make sure that we are tracking down my SQL Server instance and is able to keep up with the load that we handle. Workflows are customizations. I don't know if you guys get to see, but that's workflows. Basically, that's extending functionality. When I want something to happen, when a type of incident is created or like a notification, okay, so my SLA for my incident is about to be breached. There's a way that we can keep track and send emails every 10 minutes if like you're, hey, nobody's taking a look at this incident. We need someone to take ownership or whatever. That's something that can be tracked down via workflows. And process workflows, don't remember. What's that? Okay, so yeah, so that's basically different. The change workflow versus an internal workflow. Yeah, also it's like one of these other processes that we're following here. Integration across stack basically is okay. So now that I kind of understand what the product can do, now what this is, how can that integrate with the rest of my environment? So that's what we were talking about when we were talking about the integration via connectors. Okay, so I can tell, okay, so go ahead and talk to my Active Directory domain. So this is my connector. I'm just showing you real quick. This is my connector where I tell Service Manager to go to my Active Directory. In my case, I'm just synchronizing the whole domain, right? But let's say you are in a corporate domain, like, I don't know, the example that they give us all the time is like the Redmond domain that they have like 150,000 users, etc. Well, what happens is that we need to trim down. We need to make sure that we just synchronize the users that we have. I can give you an example. I don't know if you have like an example that I wanted to talk about, but basically I went to two different universities, here one in Georgia, the other in Oklahoma. Both places, they had like 200,000 users that were synchronizing from Active Directory because, all the students that if they wanted to, like, I don't know, like get some certificates or whatever, so they were, they needed to track that information into Service Manager by, I don't know, they wanted to open a ticket for something. Okay. The problem was that they were just synchronizing not only those 200,000 objects, by the way, this is tested up to 50,000. So right out of the box, we were well, you don't support it. But actually, you are. So we had to find a way to, okay, so once you have that many amount of information coming in, we need to make sure that okay, so what are you doing with that information? What are the purposes of what are those users, what are those users, what's the purpose of those users? What are they going to be doing in Service Manager? Okay, so they needed that anyway, so okay, so we created that, and then, you can specify different things here, and you can also tell to update information from other sources other than Active Directory. So, yeah, you want to?
No, I just know that Dave was saying take a pause.
Huh? Ah, yeah. So it's 7:15. I don't know if he wants Dave either. 7:15. So I don't know if. I don't mind going. You guys want to go or no? Take time? All right, so let's take a 15-minute break. I wanted to leave time for Q&A, and also I wanted to show a couple of demos, so I just wanted to, I guess I have to fly through the presentation, sorry. But if you have any questions, I'm going to put my email later on the screen so you can email us. Okay, so long story short, let me just, okay, so I'm just going to navigate through this, and basically this is what I was telling you guys before, different roles that we have in Service Manager. We have management server role, and then we have SQL Server instances. Remember that my management server is going to be kind of the workflow engine. It's going to be the one doing all the jobs. So I'm going to be one, we call it workflow server. The first server that everybody connects to is going, or the first server that we deploy is what we call the workflow server. The workflow server is actually doing all the job that we have in terms of making sure that we are following the templates or we are, processing appropriately the different SLAs that we create for our incidents or the different notification subscriptions that we're supposed to be sending. That's done by what we call the workflow server. Then we have multiple other management servers. And then we have, of course, a SQL instance. That's going to be where all the data, is kind of our central repository of information. Then we have our back end, our front end, which is the console. I'll just navigate through this because I wanted to you guys to have Q&A or whatever. So these are different databases. Basically, this is the database that I connected, where basically I store all the information, user roles, different customizations that I want to do, and that's one of the instances for Service Manager. And then I have another set of databases that we're using where we're synchronizing the data. So basically, the data is coming from the Service Manager database, then the data is synchronized to these other databases. Long story short, when I was opening, do I still have my Excel file? When I was opening this, the Excel file, I was leveraging, well, it's not these databases, it's that database there. But let me put it this way. When I'm connecting to my reports to read reporting data, let me just try to pull up a quick report. And I need to close this out. All right, so I'm just going to just create like a quick, to run a quick report, just to, and where's my report? Hello? Well, of course, there you go. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually connecting, let's just see if that works. What I'm doing here, I'm actually connecting to the DW Datamart database, and that's where I see all the data that is, generating my report. So this is, let me see if I can close this out or make it smaller. Well, doesn't matter. But my point is here. These are different incidents that I have in my environment, and I'm talking to one database. And then what I'm doing is, if I wanted to process the information that I was showing you guys in this database, what I'm doing is I'm processing the data, and I'm kind of getting the data out of this other database that I have here, the DWAS database. And that's where I'm processing what we call OLAP cubes, online analytic processing cubes. And these are two databases were used when they wanted to extend functionality or reporting functionality for Operations Manager. That's why OM and Configuration Manager. But I don't think there's many uses. I don't know if you. This was kind of an idea, like a design idea. Okay, so now that we have all integrated or tied together, we're going to be extending functionality. But now it's still on the product, but there's not much use that we have for it. So this is my lab. No, I'm joking. So this is how complex it could get if we need to support like an enterprise organization where we have different roles that we need to support, or different teams that we need to support, or we have like a really complex set of processes and number of users that we need to support. So do you guys see okay? Because I just don't want to, well, anyway. This, what I'm seeing here, just navigate through what we are seeing here. Basically, these are the different databases that I have for my report server. This is just connectivity that I have to my data warehouse instances. And then what I'm seeing here is just connectivity to my Service Manager, database. So this is kind of translating all those databases into an implementation. In my lab, to keep this really simple, I just have everything running in 2 servers. So you see SM2 and 3. So the server that I'm connecting to the console is SMO1, and the server that I'm getting the data from for reporting is SMO2, and that also is the server that I'm using for extracting the data for the Excel file, for the information that I'm exposing in the cubes. All right, so let me get through that again. Okay, so I don't know how much of this you want to talk about, but this is basically what are components inside Service Manager itself. Class versus instance, basically what we're doing is we're defining instances of class, and so what I mean by that is we have here, let me show you so you understand. So this is the type of class. In my case, it's an incident class, And then an instance of the class is going to be my incident itself. Okay? So that's what they mean by instance versus a class. Configuration item, we were talking about that before. That's information that I'm synchronizing from ID, or that I can create on my own. But usually it's it's just data that is coming from Active Directory. Here, work items is what we were talking about before. My work items are going to be my different type of instances of objects. For example, I don't know, let's see. When I was following my process, I had different activities. Let me see if I have all activities. So you see that that was a new activity that I was showing in. This is part of a service request. So the service request came in with a manual activity, and then the manual activity is already completed. But I can create a new one and track that down, etc. And then we can, see that from here, activity management. And then we can capture reports, or we can also leverage them from cubes. And then administrative items and modules, basically this is just functionality for Service Manager. Modules are different workflows that we create, like customizations that we want to deploy to extend functionality of Service Manager, okay? So we need to be careful with that, because the product is actually flexible to do whatever we want to. So for example, I don't know, here's the notifications. I'm going to create different templates. So these are just templates that I created. Well, actually, this is the one that I created. These are coming out of the box. And basically, the more notification templates that I have, the more aware my workflow server or this server is going to be waiting for something to happen, because I actually define that when I create that. So this is the configuration for my subscription. So okay, so what I'm telling you, okay, so when the incident, sorry, I'll go here. Well, let me just create a new one. Well, doesn't matter. My point is, whenever we define a criterion, we're going to be able to expose that information or to show that information for us. That's done via templates, or we also, and also creating those in here. That's our, sorry, I read templates. That's where we also create more templates to tell Service Manager to do more operations. Okay, process management. Okay, so how do we do that, or how do I store customizations that I do in Service Manager? Basically, what we do is we use what we call management packs. So management pack is going to be a definition of objects that I model in my environment. Okay, so how do I get a management pack, or what is the purpose of a management pack? I'm going to be checking that here. So in the administration section, I go to management packs, and then I have different management packs that are going to be, basically I'm telling Ops Manager to do something, and that something is inserted in the management pack. So let me show you an example of a management pack. That's basically an XML file. I thought I had that here, but I'll just, here. So this is just a management pack. We don't need to, take a look at, I don't want you guys to like read the whole XML file, but basically my point is the management pack itself is basically a collection of objects that we define and that we insert into my CMDB, into my Service Manager database, and then we tell Service Manager to do something with that. So long story short, in this case, my management pack only has views. So you see this node here called views. Let me just zoom in for the ones that are on the back. So you see, okay, let me take a step back. So these are the different sections in my XML file, right? And what I'm doing is okay, so what do I have in this management pack? So in this management pack, I see that I have a view. Okay, so what is the view for? All right, so I see that the view is for something called work items assigned to me. And, I have different definitions for that. I create references, et cetera, and then what I get is this view that I have here, work items assigned to me. So that was added by the management pack. Let me make some room here. Let me zoom in. So out of the box, we only have the different work items views, like generic views, and that view here that was added when I imported the management pack. So the way that what we call management pack works is we insert the management pack in the database, and then the service manager server processes that change, and that's what we need to get done. In this case, just create a folder and filter that information, filter what we have in here with some specific criteria. In this case, we are using, let me just pull up real quick. It was me, sorry. It was the tag, I think. Don't remember right now. Tag, I don't remember. But anyway, well, we're here. You see that token, sorry. For example, in this case, this is what it tells me, what is the type of object that I want to. So there are different definitions for, instead of me, if I can put group, and I wanted to create like instead of, you have your analyst, your help desk analyst that they wanted to see, instead of the items assigned to me, to Jose, the user one, whatever, okay, no, I just want to see the items assigned to my group. Then what I need to do is I need to go ahead and modify this XML file and change this token here. And usually that is documented on the web, or you just do your own research and take a look at it, modify that, and then we update different parameters in here, and then we reinsert an updated version of that XML file, and then that should reflect that change in here. Make sense? All right. Go back here. So that was just the first topic. Process management packs is XML based. So you saw already that that's basically an XML file that has a lot of definitions. We kind of drill down in whatever we want to, or those definitions are kind of customized on what we need. Usually those are created by the product, and we just hack the XML or whatever as we need to. Contains definitions for workflows, views, form, classes, templates, and other work items and configuration items. And that's what we were talking about here. In this case, this management pack had just views. Okay, so that's what this management pack is for. That's it. We can add whatever we want to. We can create like multiple management packs. Doesn't matter how many you have, as long as you are making something useful out of it. Because one management pack that has a bad configuration can bring the whole server down. So you don't want to run into a situation. Store customizations, so basically any change that we're doing into the product, like when I'm creating like some, I don't know, like creating a template for something, that template is stored in a management pack. So you see, select and unseal management pack where the template will be saved. So what I do is say, okay, so I can either create like a new management pack where I define, okay, so this is going to be the TSMP, whatever. And then that management pack is going to be added into this view here, and then we're going to be able to export that and see the information that we have here. I don't think that you guys are going to see a lot of value in doing that right now, but basically, trust me. Just want to make sure that we cover all that we have. Okay, can be moved amongst different systems. Basically, what that means is, okay, so I have this file here, and let's say I have another service manager environment somewhere, or I have my QA environment and I want to move that to my production environment. What I do is I copy that file there and go ahead and import that file by just doing this, import, okay, and I go and select my file, and that's going to be, once I click import, it's going to be imported. In my case, it's already imported, but if I update the version, for example, you see that it's 1000. If I put that to 1, there's something new. Let's go ahead and import that into the database. Back to presentation. Extension of, well, this is more of a design. If this is the last one, if you're like a management pack developer, what they mean by schema in the management pack is basically a definition of the object or the way that we present information. And that is exposed by what we're seeing here. You see schema version 2.0. Depending on the system center product that you're working, you're going to have different releases of the schema for management packs. In this case, we're using 2012 R2, which basically is using the latest version of the schema that we have. The first release of Service Manager was 1.1, and the first all releases that use actually this type of functionality was of Service Manager 2007. Back in October 2007, they had version 1. So, I don't know if there's something, nothing to add? Okay. No, okay. So that's basically management pack functionality. Remember, it's like an XML file. I define what I want to do in the management pack, and based on that, I export, import that, move that between environments. That's another flexibility that we have in System Center, or at least in Operations Manager and Service Manager. Management packs can be moved between different environments. Run as accounts, basically those are to run different operations under a specific context. Usually that is done when I need to keep track of processes that are happening in my environment. So in other words, you see that I have, let me just zoom in. So these are different processes in Service Manager, right? So I have, this is what we call the SDK service that lets me open the console. This is the process of the console itself, and these are monitoring hosts are basically the processes that are doing the job that I'm telling to do via management packs. And you can see that those processes are actually running in the different user contexts, okay? So a run as account is basically a feature that I have to configure or to impersonate a specific operation running under a specific user. Why? Two things that I know, and if you know someone else. One is keep track of processes that are running. So if I wanted to know, okay, so if I'm troubleshooting something, I need to know that whatever processes is running, okay, I know that this is the service that was running that process. So when the process crashed, I know that that user was there. Okay. If I have everything with a single user, then it's going to be way more difficult to expose or troubleshoot things. Workflow run as account, basically it's going to be, okay, so any operations that we have in our environment are going to be running via my workflow account. In my case, my workflow account is this guy here, Service Manager Workflow Account, okay? So these processes, monitoring hosts, basically come and go based on what we are looking for. So I don't know, if we have different templates to do different operations, then we're going to have more instances of processes coming and going, and that's going to translate into more CPU utilization. So you see here that it's clear that I need more RAM, or I'm really using a lot of RAM, but my CPU is fine. And I've seen cases where, monitoring host is just you doing too much, or situations where processes are causing bottlenecks in the environment, and those are really difficult to troubleshoot. Other run as accounts, just for specific things that you want to do. I need to run a specific workflow in other service, server, something like this is like something else. I'm not seeing many examples of that, but the functionality is there. And where do we configure that? Here. Security, run as accounts. So yeah, I'm on the administration workspace. I'm going to security, I'm going to run as accounts. So here are the different accounts that I have in my environment. So if I wanted to create a new one, I need to go to the right here. No. Sorry. No, sorry. That's defined when I create a template. When I'm doing an operation, I can create a new run as account. I don't do it from here. Sorry. But my point is, we can create different run as accounts to do different operations, and that's where we see where the run as accounts are. All right, I'll just fly through this. This is kind of how this works. Basically, what we're doing is long story short, this slide, what the slide is showing us is how Service Manager works. Basically, I'll just show you real quick by taking a look at Task Manager. Where are we? Well, there. So basically, Task Manager is going to be keeping track of, so this is one service that is actually lets me open the console. This our service is the service that is keeping track of changes happening in the database. So whenever someone deploys a new management pack, the config service is going to catch that update, and it's going to tell, hey, my health service, this process here, you need to go ahead and process this new change that I created. So the health service says, oh, okay, yes, that's right. And then it pushes that configuration into the server that we're at the times. In this case, it's the workflow server. So that's in a nutshell what we were seeing in this slide. Basically, it's I deploy management pack. The management pack is processed by the services into Service Manager, and then once the management pack update is processed, then the functionality is added. An example of that is I go ahead and deploy the management pack that creates my view here. That's an update because I'm pushing something new to the environment. The data warehouse management server is kind of a similar, data warehouse management server is kind of a similar situation. I'm not going to I'm going to document that, but basically, long story short, what we're doing is we're synchronizing the data coming from the other environment. So I show you guys that I have 2 servers. So basically, in this server 1, I have one set of services like, management packs, workflow server, all the console connections that I'm using is connected to SMO1. And then what I'm doing is SMO2 is going to be receiving the data that the service manager database is transferring for SMO1 and process that data for reading the reports that we were talking about or for processing the data that we're seeing here. Okay? So, all right. So, 753, let me see. All right. So these are some resources. If you're interested, what I'm going to do is I'll just share those there if you're interested. Huh? Well, no, it is. I created that. So what it is, you guys, if you need to know more or if you're interested in having more information, these are the links. aak.ms/SCSM blog. I created this myself, so it's easier for us to remember. And okay, let me go real quick to the demos, so we cover everything. So this is what I was telling you guys before, that the information that I have in my environment. So let me show you, or let me navigate this kind of, exposed information for you guys. So basically, what it did is, basically we're doing here, we're exposing data that is processed by what we call OLAP queues. So basically what we're doing is, okay, every night or a specific time, Service Manager has an internal process done on the slide that I was showing you guys before, where it's basically processing information. And that information, once it's processed, what we're doing is we're able to expose that information to extend the reporting functionality by taking a look at different views that I'm querying. So basically what this is doing is just running a query. And I'm reading that information from the query, and I'm exposing that in Excel. So these are different active incidents. I don't know if you guys get to see, but this view here is just, this is something that I should modify in my environment. So in my case, you can see that I have 471 incidents, but I have no classification. So what's happening is I need to create a template into Service Manager, so the incidents that are coming from Operations Manager are classified into something. Because right now, I have almost 500 incidents, but what are those for? Like email, hardware, something? The other graph here is like all incident by status, but this is a good one because it shows that I have 61 of my incidents are closed. And I see that 20% of those incidents are actually resolved. So I have an internal workflow that is actually closing every day all the tickets that are resolved. But usually we need to close those manually. So, this is actually a good thing. We can see here, this is kind of a trend analysis for, okay, so this is, okay, so what happened on May 13? Something, okay, so, whatever incident. All right, then, these are like something else happened. So this is kind of more information that we can see by date. This is another example that we can tell, and you can see that my console, I created just a few incidents, like 0% from the console, and then I created all the incidents that I'm using, which reflects the true, are coming from Operations Manager. So basically what I'm doing is OM, throw all the data that you have into Service Manager and let Service Manager deal with it. That is actually bad. Well, it should be tuned down. That's my point. You need to make sure that only you get the relevant information inserted into your ticketing system. Otherwise, you're just going to get too much information. Or you may have tickets that have no, actionable items or something like that. I remember going to a customer side that he was, I think they were charged by ticket. So they really need to keep that number down. So, it was going to be less optimal resources for them. Same, here is my trend for, okay, so when I'm resolving my incidents, and we can see that in different days, these are the incidents that are being resolved. These are resolved automatically by OM. I don't go there and close 130 incidents. Basically, they're internal workflows that change status of my incidents. And let me show you one example. This is just as the information is coming from operations manager, the operations manager alert is resolved, so the status of my incident is actually set to resolved. So let me just show you this example here, or I don't know, any example, whatever. I'm just going to take a look at this one that is resolved, any of those. So I'm opening the incident, and I see, this is information that was, as I mentioned before, populated from operations manager, and then I have my history tab where basically is, all right, so who is doing what? So I can see that my alert connector was the one that created the incident, that day at 3:30 p.m. Then my workflow account assigned a priority to that incident, okay? That's, again, when I was telling you guys that we're doing workflows, we're running things in the background, these are the things that are actually happening. So we need to make sure that we just define the process, and we have the templates, and we have the different, we just want to make sure that we only document what we need to, or that we only keep track of what we need. Otherwise, we may see a lot of data here, and also that could translate into too many things to do if you have multiple, issues. Here we see that my connector went ahead and updated the resolution state of this incident to resolved, okay? And then I have the result date. So, and then I have a workflow running in the background that is going to close the incident for me. And that's why we see that my incident, like all the closed incidents, the number is actually really good because I actually have a workflow. Let me show you one workflow. It was under administration, settings, and this is a third-party add-on that I inserted into Service Manager. So you see auto-close settings. So when I double-click that, so you see I have, okay, so whenever I have an incident resolved for one day, go ahead and run a workflow that's going to close that incident. So anything that is, that is resolved for one day, every day at midnight, there's going to be something triggered by this that is going to change the status of that object to closed. And you can see that. Let me show you an example of that. So let me just go to closed. Let me go to the bottom. All right, so you see there, I'm just opening an incident, and I'm going to my history, and we can see that it was closed. Actually, it's there. Well, the problem here is that I don't have my server running 24/7, so that's why I see different timestamps. But if I had my server running all day, then I'm pretty sure that was going to kick off at midnight. You see that it's 4 a.m. because, well, it was up at 4 a.m. for whatever reason. All right, so this is another workflow. This is another example of how workflow works in Service Manager. Okay, one more thing. Examples. Let me show you. All right, so I have 3 different examples that I wanted to show you here. We already talked about this. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but this is basically following we call it, like a walkthrough. Basically, we define the criteria that we want to, and then we expose that information, and I just, created this Excel file with the information from, that is synchronized. All right, so I'll just navigate through this. This is the portal, right? And, it's running there. And, okay, so this is really simple. It doesn't, it's not going to be like something spectacular or something. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm calling Orchestrator from Service Manager to create a user ID in Active Directory. All right, so just go ahead and, just put a name, and then, all right, so this is the service request. Okay, so I'm going to create that. And, okay, so, I don't know. Any name, I don't know. Huh? Thank you. So, okay, so this is the information. Okay, so I submit, and then I created my service request, and it has that number, 802. Okay. So then what happens is that I'm going to my Service Manager console, and I have my service request, and I have all active service requests. And we can see here that it's already there. And if I open that up, I'm going to be able to see that there is a runbook activity. Basically, I'm calling orchestrator, and orchestrator has some parameters that I wanted to pass to orchestrator so orchestrator can do its job. And we can see that those are the parameters that we added in my service request, right? All right, so I'm going to let orchestrator do its thing. You know, that basically what's happening right now is I'm going to be able to see. All right, so here's the runbook, right? That I'm calling from Service Manager to Orchestrator. So I want to see what is the status of that runbook, and what I do is I click on Be Associated Runbook, and this is what it, basically what goes and tells me 1714. 802. So that means that the runbook already completed. Okay. So for the ones that are on the back, so what I did is I went to my orchestrator console, the web console, and I took a look at, okay, so this is a runbook that was referenced by Service Manager. Service Manager passed some parameters, and now the user was created. If I go to Active Directory user on computers, I should be able to see my user John Doe there. Okay? So what I did, in my case, I added this, so I know that it's created by orchestrator. I usually just use it like a regular user. Okay? So I just, create different user. So how did I do that from an orchestrator side? And this is what I was telling you guys that, part of the automation piece that I wanted to kind of, give you some exposure or share with you how that works. I go to my orchestrator runbook server. It's a little bit small. This is just how that this is the orchestrator runbook that I'm referencing. So basically, what I'm doing, okay, so in my runbook, this is my system server orchestrator runbook server. Okay, the server that's actually running all the runbooks that I configure, and then I created some activities that I have available from here. So all the activities, any of these activities that I created here are basically connected to my domain. In my case, I created a connection to Operations Manager so it can do something. In my case, this is a basic one, so I don't have a lot of connectivity, but in my case, this other example has parameters that I'm passing from a Service Manager to write a text file, really simple stuff as well. So if I wanted to kind of test how this works, I can use actually the runbook tester and see how I can create like a user. This is kind of a test that I can do if I needed to. So if, okay, so Do2, Do3, John, whatever. So I'm just testing if this is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So that's my runbook running, and of course it failed because it already exists. Okay? All right. So let's try that again. And I say, okay, so whatever. No, it's going. Huh? Though. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Richard. All right. Then go ahead and go. And now it's doing whatever it needs to. And then, okay, so now if we go here, we're supposed to be seeing that guy there. And that guy was added with the information that we created. So this is the other thing that I wanted to kind of show you guys how the potential or what are the features that we can actually leverage from a system standpoint. It's not only like, yeah, let's go ahead and document some tickets or whatever. Actually, we can extend the functionality of the product to tell it to do basically what we need to do. Ton of things that we can define. Anything that we are able to see here by following any of these operations, I don't know, for example, go ahead and create a process for creating, I don't know, any operation in SharePoint, for example. Okay, go ahead and connect to SharePoint and do something. Or go to Exchange and do something else. Or as I was using before, go ahead and create a user in Active Directory. So these are different operations that I can do in Active Directory, referencing runbooks that I can actually call from Service Manager. I can just leave those running here for whatever I need to. Okay, let me take a look here. What was the other one that I had? If we go back to, okay, so remember that this was the status of my service request, right? So basically, I tell Service Manager to do something. Service Manager goes, okay, so I know that I need to go to Orchestrator and create a user in AD. All right, so that's why we're seeing this status in progress, because the actually runbook activity is running. We already went through and checked what was the status. We know that the user was created. Usually there's a workflow, there's an activity in Service Manager that's actually keeping track of what's happening here. So if something was fixed or resolved or done on the other side, we go ahead and keep track of that. And in that case, the user was created, so Service Manager was aware of that, and then it went ahead and created and updated the status of my runbook activity. And we can see that by taking a look at the history. And we can see that my workflow account was actually the one that modified all the status of my user. So if I don't know, let's navigate through that. And this is different parameters that I'm passing. And then, these are different activities that I'm doing. I'll just navigate to that. You see in progress. So this is done automatically by the workflow server. So that's why we need to make sure that we are keeping track of how many consoles are connecting, how much information is coming, because there's a lot of things, or there's a lot of pieces that come into making sure that this works, but we need to make sure that everything is working as expected. In my case, it's running on SSD, and it's running with 6 gigs of RAM, so there's no way that it's going to fail. But every time that I go to customer environment, things doesn't look like that. So we need to make sure that we're able to make this work as expected. So I can see that we're almost on time, right? Yeah. All right. So any questions?
The actions, I saw you playing in PowerShell. Do you do scripted actions in PowerShell?
So the question, can we do scripted actions in PowerShell? So kind of what Jose just kind of touched on is we have this whole workflow engine available to us, and it's the same workflow engine that's presented in Operations Manager for any of those that are familiar. So yes, we can absolutely do PowerShell workflows. We actually have an authoring tool. I think the product download size is 400 meg. This authoring tool is 1.4 gig to download. Yeah. It comes with pieces of Visual Studio built into it. Do you have some of that? Do you have it installed?
I have the console installed, but I don't have anything on it.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, it has a wizard that will let you, kind of draw out your workflow, and then you drag over that PowerShell part, and you can, paste in your script as is, fill in the parameters, and then, somebody raises an incident, you kick off a process in PowerShell to have it do whatever. In a particular case, I've had customers that used, there's not a lot of enforcement in the console, like especially, this is maybe more in the case of change, or if you have users, inputting incidents in the console. To enforce that, I had a customer use a PowerShell workflow that would just run every minute, and anytime a new change was created, check every field. Does it fit the string text length, so on and so forth. If it doesn't, it set another field in the change to say it was invalid, and it showed up red, and you can customize that in the console using the same authoring tool. So.
I was trying to show how to reference. Don't remember what was the object in run.NET script here.
Oh yeah. And then so that was one part of the answer to your question. So let's take that question and apply it to, so Orchestrator being one component of the System Center suite and Service Manager being the other component. So that was your Service Manager answer. The Orchestrator answer is we have a run.NET script, so kind of same thing here. Maybe we initialize data. Maybe this is a time scheduler that's running on a interval or whatever, and we can have it run a .NET script. That's just kind of a generic term that they gave. Anything that you can paste in there that's C#, JScript, PowerShell, or VB.NET. So you can actually paste in, C# code into there if you weren't familiar with PowerShell or whatever.
Your
Pre-populating.
last name, first name, and then your statistics are fields that you said closed or resolved or active. Although I guess when someone submits something, it's automatically active.
Not necessarily. You can have a new state.
Then the user would have to put in active.
Right.
Or the administrator would put in
Or you have a workflow defined for it. That's kind of going back to the workflow part where, let's say you end up inputted a change or something and it comes in as new, and then a workflow picks it up and then it goes into submitted status. And you can customize those statuses too. So.
So based on your response, it can change to active, close in the field for what you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can.
How's it interpreting that?
In what regard? So if we're looking, say, I used to change an example, but Jose has a lot more incidents here. So right now, the actual just going with the status field, that's something that's a little bit more. It's kind of it's a dynamic field that's statically exposed in the UI, if that makes sense. So our UI doesn't let you change it, but the work, depending on where you're at in the actual incident process, that could have a different status associated with it.
So a short example where here, like when the incident came in already populated with
So yeah, I guess to Jose's point here, if we look at the templates, some of that data is predefined in your template. Is that kind of where you're going with that, or?
Well, I was just trying to go to the basics and also if you want to create a template, how would you go about creating a template with it and have the right fields?
Right. So, kind of, you were saying, things come in as new, right? So here's this is actual editing of the template, and that new is going to be set there, and we can't change that, not without some severe customization. But now, if you want to, you wanted to come in here, classification category, for example, doesn't come pre-populated. And operations manager is submitting all these incidents without this required field pre-populated. We can come in here and modify the template for the ops manager connector to say pre-populate it with OM alert or something like that. So, all right. Good.
Cool.
Time. Oh.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.